My first player that you should sell in February is Alvin Kamara. Alvin Kamara is coming off a season where he finished ninth overall at the position. So why is he a dynasty sell? Even though he's at the top of dynasty drafts and trade values, it's really hard for him to climb higher than the running back seven, where he currently is in DLF's ADP. And so if we look at his age, he's going to turn 27 here in July. And I think his value is going to start to plummet for a couple of reasons. Number one is his durability, right? He has yet to make it through an entire season outside of his rookie season. This year, he was limited to 13 games, which was a career low despite the extra week of football. He received 240 carries, which normally is a good thing. That's the most carries he's ever had. Really hasn't eclipsed much more than 200 in any season. But he was really the only capable running back on the roster this season. And with issues at the quarterback, once Jameis Winston went down, they really had to turn to Alvin Kamara. So if there is another running back on this roster, do they find something else at quarterback? All that's kind of in flux on how many carries he does receive. The second thing that's kind of got me worried about Alvin Kamara is his recent production. While he's been super lethal in the pass catching game with at least 81 receptions in his first four seasons, he basically plummeted to roughly half that, right? He only had 47 receptions in 2021. His ability to score has always been kind of his calling card. He's had three of his first four seasons where he's had double-digit touchdowns. He only had 9 this last year. I know that's really close, but and then his just running efficiency overall, he's averaging 5 yards per carry through his first 4 years. This season, 3.7 yards per carry. And a lot of that had to come through all the extra work that he got and the lack of weapons around him. And that brings me to question number 3 for his output in 2022 and beyond is what's going to happen at quarterback and what's going to happen with his head coaching situation. We know that Jameis Winston is a free agent to be. We know that Sean Payton has stepped away from the Saints. There's just 2 big question marks here. And with the Saints in a horrible cap situation, being $73 million in the red, I'm not sure if there's going to be an offensive influx of talent coming their way. Now, whenever we say, hey, we should sell this player, we should move off of this player, I want to give you guys some context because I feel like a lot of other channels just say, hey, you need to sell this guy, but they don't give you context. So, I am selling him as a top 10 running back because that's what he's valued as. And so some possible returns for him, I think, could be DeAndre Swift. Some people will have DeAndre Swift ranked higher just based on age, and I understand that. So if you have to throw in a little something like a late second or 2022 third, I'd be willing to do that. I'd also be willing to trade away Kamara for Gibson in a 2022 first, T. Higgins in a 2022 first. That's another option. Or maybe George Kittle and Chase Claypool. These are just some different trades that I thought of. Not all of them will work. It really depends on the other team's situation, your situation, what makes sense for your team. Are you competing? Are you rebuilding? But I just want to give you some context of where I value Alvin Kamara. My next sell is a really tough one for me. And while it pains me to say it's time to look at cashing out on this person's value, and that's Terry McLaurin, who's actually going to turn 27 here, kind of right at the beginning of the 2022 season. So no, he's not old, but he's not at the age where he's going to gain any more value, right? He's at the age where he's going to stay roughly where his production is. Unless he has like a Cooper Kupp season, McLaurin's going to stay relatively steady or even go down, right? Really through his first 3 seasons, he's had around 900 to 1,100 yards, 4 to 7 touchdowns, 7 touchdowns being that rookie year. That's kind of been his standard quo. And can he continue that? I think he could. He's never finished as a top 20 wide receiver in half PPR scoring, but he has the DLF ADP of wide receiver 17. And that's according to the January ADP. So if we see that that's already not matching up, we look at his touchdown upside, I think is kind of limited, especially if we look at the rest of this team, right? Who's going to be playing quarterback? It could likely be a rookie. A lot of mocks for 2022 are mocking a rookie quarterback to the Washington football team. So I think he's getting close to an age where if he produces how he has been, or there's a little bit of dip in production, his value is going to start to plummet. So I'm right there with the masses that are clamoring that TMC is still a young player. We still need to give him the right to prove that he is a top 20, top 15 wide receiver. And honestly, I hope he proves me wrong, but I think it's just an uphill battle for him to kind of flip his current value and get even higher than the wide receiver 17. So he is a sell for me. Who am I looking to acquire if I'm moving off of Terry McLaurin? That'd be one option would be Elijah Moore and a 2022 second. I think that's a good young upside player with a pick to go alongside with that. If you're looking for some running back help, I think David Montgomery is an undervalued running back. Him in a 2022 third should probably get that done. And then maybe a third option here, Michael Pittman in a 2022 second. Really like Michael Pittman and how he's looked in his first couple of seasons. I'm going to give you a super young player. In fact, he's coming off of his rookie year, and that is Amon-Ra St. Brown. Now, I talked about St. Brown on the last episode of our TFA Dino Show podcast, which you can find on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. Definitely tune in. We have about an episode a week coming for you all. But back to St. Brown, he had a fantastic season, a fantastic finish to the season, really. If you look at weeks 13 through 18, he outscored every single wide receiver named Cooper Kupp. He was a top 6 wide receiver in points per game from week 8 on, which is over half the season. That's just fantastic, right? So why am I telling you all to move off of a young player who had a fantastic rookie season? Well, there's definitely a caveat to that when you look at the full scope of what happened to the Detroit Lions, right? And if you look at Amon-Ra St. Brown as a player, I feel like he is definitely that high floor, low ceiling guy that we just saw kind of what I would deem as his potential ceiling, right? So we have to look at TJ Hawkinson goes out, DeAndre Swift goes out. Those are 2 of their best players and their best pass catchers, really. And then if you couple that with the fact that the Lions wide receiver room was just not, it was a little devoid of talent, I think, to put it lightly. I mean, we're talking about Khalif Raymond, Josh Reynolds, Trinity Benson. These guys are definitely not your cream of the crop when it comes to the wide receiver room. So, if the Lions move in the draft and try and pick up a wide receiver, if they do that in free agency, along with Hawkinson coming back, along with Swift coming back, I think that makes me nervous for the target volume that St. Brown could have. It'll be a little different than what he had the last handful of weeks. That's going to be my main argument for why you should move off of Amon-Ra St. Brown. This does not mean he's not going to be good. This does not mean he can't have a fantasy value. But if he's valued as kind of a top 24-ish wide receiver that he is right now, he's just outside of that in DLF ADP. I think there's other guys I'd like to pivot to make that trade to improve my team right now. And one trade I actually did was trading Amon-Ra St. Brown, and I flipped him for Mike Evans. And to be honest with you, I thought that was a fantastic trade. Mike Evans is just a guy who puts up 1,000 yards season in, season out. Now, he's older, could be without Tom Brady, but we have to look at, just a history of production versus what happened with St. Brown, given the circumstances of the Lions. So definitely looking to move off St. Brown as my third player. My final sell for this video will be Dalton Schultz. Dalton Schultz is likely to cash in on a contract year where he was absolutely stellar. He had 78 receptions, 808 yards, 8 touchdowns, and he finished as a tight end 4 on the season. It was a really remarkable season. With the Cowboys up against the cap, he's likely to go somewhere else in 2022 and beyond. And so that's kind of where it comes into reason for moving away from Schultz, right? And if you look at best case scenario for where he can go in free agency, if he doesn't stay with the Cowboys, which again, I think is pretty unlikely, I think it could be the Los Angeles Chargers. I think that's a really similar high profile, high scoring passing offense. I think there's a lot more likely of a chance he goes to a team like Jacksonville, Indianapolis, Tennessee, the Jets. All of these teams have tight end needs and plenty of cap space. So the more likely chance, right, is that he ends up in an environment that is just not producing at the same clip that he did with the Dallas Cowboys. So this isn't to say that Schultz won't be productive if he lands on one of these latter teams, but I'm just not sure if he retains the value that he currently has as a top 10 dynasty tight end according to DLF ADP. What can you get back for Dalton Schultz? I'd say a 2023 first is not too much to start with. Now, if someone doesn't want to take that, I'd be willing to settle for a 2022 second. Another player would be Darnell Mooney if you need some wide receiver help, or Michael Carter if you need some running back help. I think those are 3 trades that I would do for Dalton Schultz. That's all I have for you guys today for the 4 dynasty sells. Make sure you're keeping tuned in to our videos this quote-unquote dynasty off season. We have a ton of content coming, some dynasty buys coming after this video, as well as some recap videos or just some info videos on how to play Dynasty Fantasy Football, some tips and tricks. And of course, we are going to get into those 2022 rookies, so stay tuned.